Omar al-Rashid arranged the chess pieces without asking. He spoke in Arabic to the men behind him, low, fluid, contemptuous, while Anna Morrison stood at the head of her own conference table and understood nothing. The heat in her face was visible. Omar turned and smiled. "Typical American," he said in precise, accented English, "expecting the world to speak your language." Michael Calloway was mopping the far corner of the room. His daughter Emily sat near the door, backpack in her lap. No one had looked at either of them. Then Emily walked to the table, looked up at Omar, and said in clear Arabic, "I will play with you, sir." The room went completely still. Michael set down his mop. The notification arrived at 6:14 in the morning. Anna Morrison was already awake. She had not slept past 5 in 11 days, standing at the window of her apartment on the 23rd floor with a cup of coffee she had forgotten to drink. The message was from the bank. She read it twice. 28 days. Secure Vault had been her life for 6 years. She had built it from a rented server room and a business plan written on a yellow legal pad. The encryption technology her team had developed was genuinely revolutionary. A layered authentication system that could protect sensitive data at a level the commercial market had not yet seen. 3 enterprise clients had signed letters of intent. 2 venture firms had called it a generational breakthrough. And the company had exactly $3 million in outstanding debt, no operating runway left, and 28 days before a bankruptcy filing that would end everything. Anna was 32 years old, and she had no plan that did not involve Omar al-Rashid walking out of her building today with a signed commitment. Omar's fund, Gulf Meridian Capital, had $50 million earmarked for domestic tech infrastructure. His assistant had emailed 4 days ago. The meeting was this morning. If she left without a commitment, there was no next meeting. There was no next anything. She put the phone face down on the windowsill and finished the cold coffee in one swallow. Michael Calloway arrived at the building at 7:45, 20 minutes before his shift. Emily walked beside him through the lobby, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, her backpack bouncing with each step. Her school had closed due to severe weather. Michael had called 3 people on his contact list. The first 2 did not answer. The third, his neighbor Patricia, had a conflict she apologized for 3 times. He told her it was fine. Emily was good at being quiet when she needed to be. The security guard, Dwayne, waved them through without comment. He had seen this before. It was an arrangement built on the understanding that nobody wanted to make a big deal out of a widower doing his best. Sarah had been gone for 22 months. She had been a language teacher, middle school first, then community college, and she had believed, with a conviction that was almost physical, that language was the thing that separated loneliness from connection. Not fluency, she used to say. Not grammar. Just the willingness to try. She had apps on every device in the house. Arabic, Swahili, Farsi, Mandarin, Portuguese. She used them the way other people used music, background noise that was also a form of thinking. After she died, Michael had packed most of her things into 2 boxes that sat in the closet of the second bedroom. He had not opened them since. But the tablet, her old tablet, with the cracked corner of the case he left on Emily's nightstand, without instruction, without explanation. He simply left it there. Emily used it every night before bed. She had started with Arabic because it was the first app her mother had downloaded, the one at the top of the list. She had been working through it for 19 months, steadily and without announcement, without asking for acknowledgement. Michael knew she used the tablet. He had not thought to ask what she was actually doing with it. Grief has a way of narrowing what a person can hold at once, and for 2 years he had been holding as much as he could. The moment Emily spoke, Omar's hand stopped moving above the board. The word sir, the child had called him sir, landed in the room the way an unexpected sound lands, changing everything it touches. He looked at her for a long moment. She did not look away. The 2 assistants behind Omar exchanged a glance. Anna Morrison stood very still and did not breathe. Michael had taken 1 step toward his daughter before he stopped himself. He had seen her face, and it was not the face of a child who needed to be rescued. It was something else. Calm, almost deliberate. He stayed where he was. Omar pulled out the chair across from him and gestured toward it. Not a welcome, a test. Emily climbed into the chair, pushing herself up on her knees to reach the board properly. She did not appear to notice this or to be embarrassed by it, She set her backpack on the floor and placed both hands flat on the table. Omar studied her the way he had not studied anything else in the room, with his full and complete attention. He opened with the Queen's Gambit. It was the opening of a man who had always expected to control whatever board he sat down at. Emily looked at the position for 4 seconds Anna counted, and moved her pawn to decline it, correctly, into a solid defensive structure. Omar's right eyebrow shifted almost imperceptibly. He did not speak. They played for 11 minutes. The room stayed quiet in the way that rooms sometimes go quiet when something is happening that no one can quite name. Anna found herself watching Michael as much as she watched the board. The careful stillness of him, the way he stood with his arms at his sides, the expression on his face that was not quite pride and not quite grief, but something that lived in the narrow, complicated space between them. Omar reached across the board midway through the game and asked Emily something in Arabic. His voice was different now, not the clipped, performative tone he had used when addressing Anna, but something quieter, almost careful. "What is your mother's name?" Emily looked up at him. "Sarah," she said. "My mom passed away." Omar did not move for 3 full seconds. His hand, still extended above the board, came back slowly to rest in his lap. The controlled, appraising expression he had worn since he walked into the room was simply gone. In its place was something unguarded and brief, like a window opened by accident and then carefully closed again. Michael turned toward the windows. His shoulders pulled together once, then released. The game ended in a draw. A 6-year-old child had drawn against a man who had played chess for 4 decades. No one in the room said anything. Omar sat back in his chair and looked at Emily for a long moment, then shifted his gaze for the first time to the man in the blue janitor's uniform standing near the wall. He looked at Michael Calloway the way you look at something you have been standing beside for a long time without ever truly seeing it. The draw was not a small thing. In 40 years of playing, Omar al-Rashid had not been held to a draw by accident or by a distracted opponent. A child with a borrowed tablet and a quiet, patient persistence had held him to one. That was not something he intended to set aside. He knew it. And across the room, watching his daughter return each chess piece carefully to its starting position, so did Michael. Omar requested a private meeting with Anna before the formal session began. But first he paused beside Michael and looked at him directly. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 3 years, Michael said. "And before that?" Michael held the older man's gaze. "Something else," he said. It was not an answer. Omar accepted it without pressing and followed Anna's assistant toward the conference room at the end of the hall. What Michael could not have known was that during the chess game, Omar had reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He did this quietly, the way a man does a thing he has done many times before in many different rooms, with many different people who never realized they were being evaluated. He opened the building's employee directory and typed in the name from the badge on Michael's chest. Calloway, M. The record was not what he expected. Michael Calloway, age 36. Current position: Facilities and Maintenance, Building 7. Previous employment: software engineer at 2 firms over 4 years, then lead systems architect at NovaCipher Technologies, a Chicago-based cybersecurity startup that had grown quickly and been acquired 4 years ago by a larger firm. The acquiring company's core technology now formed the foundational security infrastructure for several enterprise clients. Among them, Secure Vault Incorporated. Michael had not simply worked in the same general field as the company whose floors he now cleaned. He had, in a direct and verifiable sense, built a significant portion of the foundation that Secure Vault's encryption platform still rested on. He had done this in his early 30s, in the years when Sarah was still alive. Then he had stopped not for a better offer, not for a competing firm. He had submitted a 1-line personal leave request, family medical emergency, and he had never returned. The background file showed a gap. Then his current role? Held for 3 years without incident, without complaint, and without anyone in the building. Apparently, knowing who he had been before he put on the blue uniform and began moving through these hallways, as though he had always been invisible in them. Omar read the file twice. He put his phone away without expression and returned his attention to the board. After Omar left the room, Anna stood at the glass wall that faced the hallway. Michael was pushing his cart toward the supply closet at the far end of the corridor. Blue uniform, steady pace, Emily walking beside him with her backpack reinstalled on her shoulders. Anna had walked past this man probably 200 times in 3 years. She had nodded at him the way you nod at the people who keep a building running, an acknowledgement of presence that stops just short of registering a person fully. It was not a cruelty she had been conscious of. It was the particular narrowing that urgency produces over time, the way it teaches you to see only what is directly in front of you and to let everything else recede, until the day something will not recede any further. She stood at the glass and watched him until he turned the corner and was gone. Then she stood there a moment longer, looking at the empty hallway. Then she went to find him. Omar's terms were not complicated, but they were not gentle. He would consider the investment on one condition: an independent technical audit of Secure Vault's full encryption architecture conducted by his own team over the next 72 hours. If they found any vulnerability, any gap, any inconsistency in the security layers, he would walk away. No negotiation, no second chance. He delivered this with the steady calm of someone who had said it before and meant it every time. Anna thanked him and showed him out with the composure she had spent 12 years building. Then she stood alone in the empty conference room and let the full weight of what she was facing settle over her. The problem was not the audit itself. She believed in her technology. She had built it, overseen every stage of its development, stress-tested it against every scenario her team could construct. The problem was who would guide Omar's auditors through the review. They would need someone who understood the original architecture from the inside, not the system as it currently stood, but the logic behind how it had been conceived, the decisions made early in the design phase when the foundational layers were being established, the places where the bones of the original design still shaped everything built on top of them. The person who had held that understanding most completely had left 3.5 years ago without completing his notice. His departure was logged in HR as a personal emergency. No exit interview, no knowledge transfer document, just a building badge left with the front desk receptionist one afternoon, and a silence that closed over the gap so completely that Anna had never known it was there. Until 45 minutes ago. She found Michael at the far end of the hallway near the elevator bank, his cart loaded with cleaning supplies, a pair of yellow rubber gloves tucked into his back pocket. "Mr. Calloway," she said. He stopped, turned. The expression on his face was the practiced neutral of someone who has learned to wait before reacting. "Are you the person who wrote the Layer 3 encryption architecture for the original system design of this company?" She said it directly, without softening, because she had found over 12 years that directness paired with genuine respect was the only thing that worked when time was short. Michael looked at her for a measured moment. "Who's asking?" "Your CEO," Anna said. He did not answer right away. He looked down at the yellow gloves in his hands. He had pulled them from his pocket without realizing he had done it, and then looked back up at her. "What do you need?" he said. The real answer was everything she could ask for. She needed his memory, his judgment, his understanding of decisions made years ago in a design room she had never entered. But the hallway was not the right place for that, and 28 days left no room for the wrong beginning. "Come with me," she said. "I will explain." He was the person who had built the foundation of the company she was fighting to keep alive. He had built it, then disappeared, then come back to clean its floors. And now she needed him to do in 72 hours the thing no one else in the building could do. She walked, and he followed, and the elevator behind them opened and closed on an empty car. The room Anna brought him to was not her office. It was the small staff conference room on the 4th floor, the one used for lunch breaks and informal check-ins, with a round table, 4 chairs, and a coffee maker on a rolling cart by the window. She filled 2 mugs without asking how he took it. Michael sat across from her. He still had the yellow gloves on. He noticed them and pulled them off and set them on the table beside him. She did not lead with an apology or with any softening preliminary language. She laid it out plainly. The way you lay out something, you need another person to be able to see clearly. Here is where we are. Here is how we arrived. Here is what we are facing. 28 days. $3 million in outstanding debt. Omar al-Rashid's audit was the last realistic path to keeping the company alive. Without his investment, Secure Vault would enter bankruptcy proceedings before the month ended, and everything she had built for 6 years would be gone. Michael listened without interrupting, without the small performed nods that people use when they are indicating attention without fully giving it. He simply listened. When she stopped, there was a pause of several seconds before he spoke. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Anna looked at him steadily. "Because I need your help, and because you deserve to know the actual reason why." There was no strategy in it. It was simply the truth, offered plainly, which was the only thing she had left that was worth offering. He absorbed that. Outside in the hallway, visible through the narrow window beside the door, Emily had fallen asleep on one of the padded chairs against the wall. Her head rested on her backpack. Her sneakers, which did not quite reach the floor from that height, hung perfectly still. One hand was curled loosely under her cheek. She looked, from inside this room at this distance, impossibly small. Michael looked at his daughter through the glass. Then he looked back at Anna. "If I stay in here," he said, "Emily's still out there." Anna did not answer with words. She stood, crossed to the door, opened it, and pulled one of the empty hallway chairs into the room. She placed it right there next to Michael's chair, not across the table, not at a professional remove, but directly beside him, and then she went back to the door and held it open. "No," she said. "Come in here." Michael looked at the empty chair for a moment that lasted noticeably longer than she had expected. Then he stood, went to the hallway, and gathered his daughter gently, backpack and all, and carried her back into the room. Emily stirred but did not fully wake. He settled her into the chair, arranged the backpack under her head, and sat back down. "Okay," he said quietly. "Tell me what you need." It was a small thing she had done, pulling a chair from the hallway, holding a door open saying, "Come in here," instead of "She will be fine out there." But Michael Calloway had spent 2 years making himself and his daughter as small as possible in every room not designed to hold them. He had not expected to be invited in. He picked up the mug she had set in front of him and held it for a moment in both hands, and something in the line of his shoulders was different from how it had been a minute before. She noticed. She did not say anything about it. She simply began to tell him everything. He started at 9 o'clock that evening. Emily had eaten the sandwich Anna sent down from the building cafe and fallen asleep on the couch in the corner of the server room, a room Michael had not entered since the week the building's original tenant completed its fit-out. Back when he was still an engineer and not the man who mopped its floors, Anna had set up a temporary access credential granting him read permissions across the full system. He sat in front of the terminal and looked at the login screen for a moment. Then he typed. The first half hour was slow. His hands remembered the keyboard before his mind fully did something disorienting about watching his own fingers navigate a system whose underlying architecture he recognized. The way you recognize the layout of a house you once lived in. The structure was his. The logic was his. But 3 years of updates and patches and personnel changes had added layers he did not know, and he moved through them carefully, reconstructing the map as he went. Anna sat at a second workstation and did not pretend to understand what she was seeing. She had printed Omar's audit brief, 12 pages of technical requirements, and was reading through it section by section, marking anything that raised a question. Every 40 minutes or so, she would ask him something. He would answer without looking up from the screen. The room was quiet except for the hum of the servers and the low ambient sound of the city far below. At 12:53 in the morning, he stopped typing. "Come look at this," he said. She moved her chair beside his. He pointed to a section of code in the authentication layer, the Layer 3 architecture he had originally designed, its structure still visible beneath everything built on top of it over the years. Embedded in a conditional routing sequence, there was a logic gap. Under normal operation, it would never be triggered. But under a specific and unlikely combination of simultaneous access requests, it created a window no more than a few hundred milliseconds, where a validation check could be bypassed. Not dangerous to ordinary users. Exactly the kind of thing an expert audit team would flag. "Can you fix it?" Anna asked. "Do you want me to?" she started. "I know what you're going to ask," he said. "No." He kept his eyes on the screen. "We document it correctly. We note when I found it and log it as a resolved vulnerability in the technical record." She looked at him. Even though it might give Omar a reason to walk. Even though. A silence settled between them that felt different from the silences earlier in the evening, less like absence, more like presence. Something taking up space in the room alongside them. If I have to cheat to survive, Anna said quietly, I don't want to survive that way. He looked at her when she said it, just briefly. Then he turned back to the screen and began to type. He finished the patch at 12:59. Documentation complete by 1:17. He leaned back and the room was dark, except for the monitors. The city outside, a low scatter of orange light against the January sky. Emily asleep in the corner with Sarah's tablet on her chest. Can I ask you something? Anna said. He nodded without turning. Sarah. How did she? She stopped. You don't have to. Ovarian cancer, he said. Diagnosed in January. Gone by October. A pause. Emily was 4. She doesn't remember as much as she thinks she does. But she remembers enough. The tablet, Anna said. Is that hers? Yeah. His voice was low and steady. She left all her language apps on it. I didn't take them off. Emily started using them on her own. I didn't realize how far she'd gotten until today. Anna thought about the girl at the chess table. The clear, unhurried Arabic. The way she had looked at Omar without flinching. She's something, Anna said. Yeah, Michael said. She is. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the screen in front of Michael went red. Not the soft amber of a routine system warning. Red, the full-panel intrusion alert that his original architecture had been designed to generate in exactly one circumstance. Active penetration of the outermost security layer by an external actor with deliberate, targeted intent. Michael was out of his chair before the alert finished sounding, his hands already moving across the keyboard. What is that? Anna said, on her feet immediately. Someone's in the system, he said. His voice was flat and completely focused. Not Omar's team. Someone else. They knew we were running the audit tonight. They timed it. She processed this in 2 seconds. How long do we have? 90 minutes. Maybe less. Asian markets open at 3:30 Eastern. If client data gets out before that, he did not finish. He did not need to. What do I do? Anna asked. Pull up the access log on that terminal. He pointed without turning. Read me every line. Start from the top. Don't skip anything. Don't summarize. Just read exactly what you see. She sat down and started reading. She did not understand most of what appeared on the screen. Log timestamps, hexadecimal addresses, protocol identifiers, a language she had never needed to learn. But she had spent 6 years building a company on her ability to execute precisely under conditions that exceeded her knowledge. And she read each line clearly and quickly and without stopping. Michael responded to what she read, the way a surgeon responds to instrument calls, no wasted motion, no commentary, each command following the previous with an economy that looked almost effortless from the outside. It was not effortless. His jaw was set and his shoulders were rigid, and once, between 2 commands, his hands paused above the keyboard for half a second in a way that told her he had encountered something unexpected. Then the pause was over and he kept moving. Emily woke at 2:40. She looked at her father, then at Anna, then at the red light on the screens. She reached down, picked up Sarah's tablet from the cushion beside her, and held it quietly in her lap. She did not ask what was happening. She made no sound. She sat with the tablet in her hands and watched calm and steady in the corner of the room. And the fact of her being there, that particular quality of stillness she carried, was something Anna would think about for a long time afterward. At 3:18 in the morning, Michael typed a final command and pressed enter. The red cleared from every screen. The system status panel returned to green. The access log confirmed the intrusion attempt terminated, blocked at the 3rd firewall layer. All client data intact, no exfiltration completed. Anna put her face in her hands and sat like that for several seconds. Michael exhaled once, slowly. Then he reached over and placed his hand on her shoulder, open and steady, resting there for a moment before he drew it back. He did not say anything. She did not say anything. But in the corner of the room, Emily set Sarah's tablet down beside her and closed her eyes again, as though whatever she had needed to see, she had seen it. In the morning, Michael traced the intrusion back through 3 proxy layers to a server cluster registered to a shell company in Delaware. The registered agent was the same firm that handled corporate filings for Vaultbreaker Incorporated Secure Vault's direct competitor, which had been pitching Gulf Meridian Capital as an alternative investment for the past 6 weeks. Anna had her outside counsel on the phone by 8:15. The evidence package was complete before Omar's audit team arrived at 9. The attack had not broken Secure Vault. It had handed Anna a legal case that Vault Breaker's attorneys were going to spend a very long time trying to dismantle. The audit concluded at 4 o'clock on the second afternoon. Omar's lead technical analyst, a precise, unhurried man named Farhan, who had said almost nothing for 48 hours, delivered his summary in 8 minutes. The system was architecturally sound. One vulnerability had been identified during the review period. It had been caught by an internal reviewer, patched correctly, and documented in full accordance with standard disclosure protocol. The identity of the internal reviewer was listed in the technical record: Michael Calloway, facilities staff. Omar read the report in Anna's conference room. He reached that line and stopped. He read it again. Then he set the report down on the table and looked at Anna across from him. "This man," he said, "he is your janitor." Anna did not hesitate. "He is the most capable person I have in this building. It took me 3 years to understand that. That is my failure, not his." Omar was quiet for a moment. He picked up the report and turned to the last page, where the vulnerability disclosure and resolution were formally logged. He read through to the end. Then he set it down again. "I have conducted this evaluation with every company I have considered investing in," he said. His voice was even and unhurried. "There is always something to be found. A gap. Something that should be disclosed and is often not. I have made this review 11 times." He paused. 3 times the leadership team asked the auditors to remove what they had found. 3 times the CEO requested it be handled quietly, without documentation. He looked at the paper in front of him. The other 8 times, the auditors found nothing at all, which tells me something different, but does not tell me something better. Anna waited. "Your team found the vulnerability. Your reviewer disclosed it. Your CEO insisted it be documented correctly." He lifted his pen from the table. "That is the first time I have seen all 3 of those things happen in sequence." He signed the term sheet at 4:47 that afternoon. $50 million, standard preferred equity terms, a board observer seat with no voting rights. He signed without ceremony, capped his pen, and stood. On his way out, he passed the lobby where Emily was sitting, with a paperback book open in her lap, clearly too advanced for her age, which she was reading with complete and unself-conscious absorption. Omar stopped. He bent down to her level and said something in Arabic, quiet and deliberate, more like an observation than a question. The tone of someone speaking to a person rather than a child. Emily looked up and answered him directly, without hesitation and without shyness. They exchanged several sentences that no one else in the lobby could follow. Omar stood. He looked across the lobby to where Michael was standing, near the elevator, watching. "Your daughter," Omar said, "showed me a move I had not considered." He did not explain what he meant. He walked to the elevator and pressed the call button and did not look back. Michael stood still for a moment after the elevator closed. Then he looked down at Emily, who had already returned to her book with the quiet equanimity of a child who had done something that made complete sense to her and saw no particular reason to discuss it further. He rested his hand briefly on the top of her head. She did not look up. She just kept reading. Anna was in the lobby before 7 the next morning, waiting, which was not something she typically did for anyone. Michael came through the revolving door at 7:44 in his blue uniform, with Emily beside him, and Anna stepped forward from near the security desk and held out a white envelope. He took it, he looked at it, he opened it. The offer letter was 2 pages. The title at the top of the first page read, "Chief Security Architect, Secure Vault Incorporated." The salary was written out in full, not abbreviated, not presented as a range. And it bore no relationship to anything he had earned in the past 3 years or the 3 years before that. Below it were the full terms: benefits, equity participation, start date, reporting structure, everything written out plainly, as though whoever had drafted it had understood that this was not a document that should require a person to read between any lines. He read it through to the end. Then he went back to the beginning and read it again. Emily, meanwhile, had drifted over to the security desk and was talking with Dwayne, who was showing her something on his phone with the careful, unhurried attention of someone who understood that small people deserved genuine engagement. "You don't owe me this," Michael said. He said it without looking up from the letter. I know, Anna said. That's why I'm doing it. He looked up at her then. He looked at her for a moment, and then he looked back down at the title at the top of the page. Something moved across his face that she could not name precisely. Not quite surprise, and not quite relief, but something that lived at the intersection of both, arriving from a direction he had long since stopped expecting things to arrive from. Give me a day, he said. Take whatever you need, she said. 2 weeks later, Anna knocked on the door of Michael's new office on the 12th floor, with the window looking out over Lake Michigan at 4:45 on a Thursday afternoon. She was carrying 2 cups of coffee. He looked up from his workstation when she knocked. She set 1 cup on the corner of his desk and was turning to leave when he said quietly, Emily's been asking about you. She wants to know if you'd come watch her play chess sometime. He set it to the surface of his desk at first. Then he looked up at her, and his expression was not quite a question, but was waiting for an answer in exactly the way a question waits. Yeah, Anna said. I would like that. They left together at 5. In the elevator going down, Anna said, That night, thank you for staying. You read the log for 3 hours straight, Michael said. You were there too. She looked at the elevator doors. She was smiling, though she had not made a decision to. The doors opened at the lobby level, and he placed his hand lightly on her back as they stepped out together, the lightest possible contact, the kind that asks a question rather than states a conclusion. She did not move away from it. She did not change her pace or the set of her shoulders. The lobby was bright and ordinary around them, and Emily was already waiting at the revolving door with her backpack on and Sarah's tablet tucked under one arm, ready to go. 6 weeks later, Michael sat at his desk on the 12th floor and looked out at Lake Michigan under a February sky, the color of old pewter. The water was flat and enormous and gray. There was a coffee cup on the corner of his desk that he had not put there. Anna had left it before her 8 o'clock meeting, set it on the corner of his desk, on her way past the open door, without knocking, without saying anything. He found it still warm when he came back from the copy room and drank it standing at the window. Emily still used Sarah's tablet every night before bed. The Arabic app showed a streak at 642 days. Beside it now was a new app, French, downloaded 3 weeks ago. A small folded note was tucked into the cracked corner of the tablet's case, written in Anna's handwriting, for the next language. Emily had placed it carefully behind the photograph she kept there, Sarah, at a picnic table somewhere sunny, laughing at something just outside the frame. The note and the photograph sat together in the case, paper against paper. That evening, Michael came home to find 3 cushions arranged around the chessboard on the living room floor. Emily was already sitting at one of them, cross-legged, waiting. The doorbell rang before he had taken his coat off. Anna came in with a paper bag from the Italian place 2 blocks over. She took her shoes off at the door, the way she had started doing on her second visit, without being asked. Emily looked up and pointed at the 3rd cushion. You sit there, she said. I'm going to beat both of you. Emily moved her first piece. The game began. Under the edge of the board, Michael's hand moved across the floor and found Anna's hand where it rested beside her cushion. She turned her palm to meet his and left it there. Emily captured one of Anna's pawns and announced it with great satisfaction. She had placed 3 cushions that evening, and she had placed each one with care, and she knew exactly where they all were.